Okay, are you ready for an epic fight between two prehistoric predators? Well, hang on. Look at this creature. You know it. An ancient shark about 65 feet long that used to swim through the dark waters of the world's oceans and was so terrifying it had no enemies. Well, almost. Scientists have recently discovered the remains of another ancient predatory fish off the coast of Australia, a fish that lived around the same time as Megalodon. It was small, about the size of a dolphin, but it could pose a danger to the infamous shark. How is it possible if this creature was many times smaller? Well, let's take a look. This monster is called Jancicetus, and technically it wasn't exactly a fish. It was a distant relative of the modern baleen whale. Outwardly, it may seem quite cute, similar to that baleen whale I mentioned, but you wouldn't want to meet it in the ocean. It had the massive skull of a whale, large eyes the size of tennis balls, and a short snout with an immensely powerful jaw filled with razor-sharp teeth. In other words, it was like a shark version of the baleen whale. Jancicetus lived during an ancient period called the Oligocene, which was about 33 to 23 million years ago. At that time, there was an incredible abundance of life in the world's waters. Giant penguins, small whales, sharks 2 to 3 times larger than modern ones, primitive dolphin species, and many other unusual creatures. Now imagine that in this ancient and terrifying neighborhood, a giant Megalodon met a Jancicetus. At first sight, it's not love. The Megalodon's victory is obvious, but don't rush to write the Jancicetus off. It's agile and fast. It's quite possible that it was more mobile than Megalodon, and during the fight, it would have avoided a direct attack. The Megalodon would have lost sight of such a small opponent, while the Jancicetus would have swum up to the shark's belly and opened its jaws. They're small, but there are a lot of sharp teeth. Now, these teeth were designed to rip and cut. The Jancicetus would attack the Megalodon with a small but very unpleasant bite, and the shark would have swum away after such a punch. But who knows? Maybe Megalodon would have immediately eaten Jancicetus in the first seconds of the fight. Megalodon could have won, but in terms of speed and mobility, it would have lost. So let's look at something bigger, something that could actually have competed with Megalodon. It doesn't have to be a monster living at the same time as the ancient shark. We can make our own rules. Imagine that all ancient marine creatures ended up in the same pool with Megalodon. So its next opponent is the Liopleurodon. Now initially scientists thought that this monster could grow to be 82 feet long, which is even larger than Megalodon. But more accurate studies have shown that it only reached 32 feet, which is about the size of a modern orca. The Liopleurodon lived in the waters of Western Europe around 160 to 155 million years ago and shared territory with other dangerous reptiles such as ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. Yes, it was smaller than them, but it had one big advantage. The Liopleurodon possessed one of the largest jaws in the animal kingdom, which accounted for about 20% of the total length of its entire body. That's a mouth. Its jaws were about 6.5 feet long. A huge, toothy mouth the size of an adult basketball player filled with smooth and dagger-sharp teeth, ideal for cutting steaks and peeling ammonite shells. And by the way, scientists suspect that ammonites and squid were the creature's main diet. This super predator was also a very fast and agile creature that ambushed and attacked its prey from below. Megalodon would have been in big trouble. The grip strength of a Liopleurodon would surely be more powerful than that of Megalodon. Besides, the Liopleurodon's size and mobility would allow it to attack the enemy from different sides. It's probably why Megalodon would have lost in that fight. The next opponent for our Megalodon is the Dunkleosteus, and to be honest, this guy has almost no chance of defeating the large ancient shark. But the Megalodon probably wouldn't have beaten it either. The Dunkleosteus was one of the earliest predators of the ocean. It lived in the late Devonian, about 382 to 358 million years ago. Its size was about 13 to 32 feet or even less, and it also had no teeth. What? A predator without teeth? How did it survive in a dangerous prehistoric world? Well, it grabbed and chewed food with the help of special jaw growths. Those growths were so powerful that they could pierce steel, if there was any around. In a sense, these were not teeth, but bones. Okay, let's say the Megalodon grabbed this predator by the belly and it couldn't do anything with its growths. But the problem is that the Megalodon would have hardly done anything either, because the Dunkleosteus was a heavily armored fish. Just look at the shell. It probably limited its mobility, but it provided incredible protection. This monster felt like a big stone in the teeth of the Megalodon. It's unlikely that the Megalodon would have wanted to chew this stone. It would have spit it out, and both predators would have gone about their business. We've got a draw here. And now, the final match. Here's the next opponent. You see anything? Is this enemy invisible? What's happening? Ah, there it is. Meet the Tullimonstrum. It's a tiny ancient monster, just 11 inches long. Huh? What can it do to a giant shark? Next to the Megalodon, the Tullimonstrum is like a box of matches compared to a human. But if the Megalodon had had a developed brain, like people do, it would have been very scared of this creature and would have immediately swum away. Many people scream and run away in fear when they see a creepy insect crawling or flying, or when a mouse runs across the floor. Some of us jump on the couch in horror. Not all of us, but some. The Megalodon would have jumped out of the water like a dolphin if the Tullimonstrum had charged at it. Just check it out. It looks like an underwater bike with a long trunk with a jaw at the end. And these handlebars, where you would put your hands to control your bike, are the eyes. It's like the eyes of a hammerhead fish, only thinner and longer. The body of a squid, cuttlefish fins, snail eyes, and a toothed proboscis. This is a horror movie character. Scientists say it probably hunted jellyfish, small fish, and shrimp. And it didn't chew the food, it licked it like ice cream. Obviously, it's not an opponent for the Megalodon, but it's still a creepy monster. Well, what would have happened had it really started a fight with the Megalodon? It would have been difficult for the ancient shark to find it. It would have been unlikely to catch this tiny monster in the mouth, and the Tullimonstrum wouldn't have been able to do anything to the Megalodon either. However, I can think of one strategy. The creepy creature had a long trunk. What if it had just swum under the Megalodon's fin and started licking it? If the shark had felt the tickles, then it would probably have worked. But most likely, they wouldn't have fought each other. It seems like they would have made perfect friends. The Tullimonstrum lived about 300 million years ago in shallow seas and estuaries that covered the territory of the U.S. When scientists discovered this creature in 1955, they were shocked because no one had any idea what it was. Experts compared it to worms, tunicates, conodonts, mollusks, and vertebrates. And do you know who it really was? Well, scientists still have no idea. They can't determine its place on the tree of evolution. Perhaps this is some new branch, and its descendants simply haven't survived to this day. The Megalodon was one of the most dangerous predators on Earth. But now we know that other equally scary monsters lived in the oceans. But what if the Megalodon lived today? Who could have defeated him? A blue whale who would be even bigger than this ancient shark. But the blue whale seems to be a kind animal. It wouldn't fight. How about the Kraken? The Kraken versus the Megalodon? Well, let's save this fight for another video.
For years, we've thought the Megalodon was just a big shark, which is scary enough. After all, it could have eaten a creature the size of a whale in just 5 bites. Estimates indicate that the largest shark that ever lived had been around 59 feet long, which is a reasonable size and explains a lot. But the scientific community was wrong. Very wrong. Now, scientists have proven that megalodons could grow up to 80 feet long, which is the same as a 6-story building. The creature would have certainly been dozens of times bigger than you if you had seen it underwater. These giants ruled the ancient oceans between about 20 million and 3 million years ago. And even though it was a long time ago, they've left a lasting impression, becoming the protagonists of many movies. And scientists continue to search for answers about their life. Thanks to this, we still occasionally find their fossils. But the thing is, no one has ever found a complete skeleton. All we have are scattered vertebrae, a few scales, and, of course, those massive, razor-sharp teeth. The most complete piece we know of is a 36-foot section of a megalodon's spine. It was once part of the trunk of the animal's body. So, to assess just how big the megalodon was, experts compared its fossils to more than 150 species of sharks, both those that are alive and those that have gone extinct, to get the most realistic result possible. If the megalodon had had the proportions of a regular shark, it would have had a 6-foot head and a 12-foot tail. It would have also stretched 54 feet from nose to fin. But these measurements are way off the mark. The largest megalodon vertebra ever found is 9 inches in diameter, which makes it 3 inches larger than the largest vertebra of a typical shark. And if we follow these proportions, that megalodon was a whopping 80 feet long. To better understand how giant this is, just think of 2 school buses lined up end to end. For a long time, it was very common to think that the megalodon was just a giant great white shark. And it makes sense, right? I mean, both would have had large, terrifying, serrated teeth. But that was another completely wrong idea. Now, we know that megalodons were actually much more slender and aerodynamic than the modern great white shark. Their body shape was built to cut through the water with much less resistance, minimizing the effects of gravity in the sea, letting them glide effortlessly through the ocean. Now, if Megalodon wasn't just another great white shark, what other animal of the same species was it most similar to? Surprise! In fact, it had more in common with the modern lemon shark. This species has robust and powerful bodies, 2 large dorsal fins, and blunt snouts, which makes them really fast and agile hunters, like prehistoric predators. In other words, while thinking about the megalodon, you can imagine a giant, turbocharged lemon shark. This is the most modern comparison of the megalodon with another animal, unless scientists find a complete skeleton of the ancient shark. But it's not common to find complete shark skeletons. They're rare because they're actually made not of bone but of soft, coated cartilage, like the stuff in human noses and ears. Their teeth are the boniest part of their bodies, and it's the reason why we've found so many of them. Yet, a complete skeleton is like scattered puzzle pieces to us. There's no solid bone to hold these pieces together, so the whole thing is very vulnerable to falling apart. Still, it's actually possible for an entire shark skeleton to survive. In these cases, very specific natural phenomena have to come into play. The skeleton needs to get buried super fast in mud or sediment, free of any kind of scavengers and away from ocean currents. Otherwise, it simply disintegrates before it can fossilize. Interestingly, although the sea is the home of these animals, it is possible to find their skeletons on land too. Millions of years ago, a big portion of today's dry land was submerged, teeming with marine life. Then, in certain places, sedimentary minerals and specific biological conditions of the seabed allowed the fossilization of sharks in marine rocks. Today, those are desert rocks that ensure the preservation of shark fossils. But in any case, searching for a shark tooth in a desert is like looking for a needle in a haystack. But finding an entire fossilized skeleton embedded in a rock is like hitting the jackpot. Another unexpected discovery is that these prehistoric sharks were not born small and cute like regular baby sharks. A newborn megalodon could reach almost 13 feet in length. That's more than twice the height of the average human. Imagine a shark the size of a boat from the moment it's born. Now, although we don't have all the information about the giant of the seas, it's a fact that it's one of the most famous animals in pop culture worldwide. Not only has it inspired several movies, But some people also insist that the Megalodon is still alive. Scientists say it's not. The Megalodon didn't survive the test of time, and it would be impossible for such a giant creature to dwell in the seas without us noticing it. First, it was a super predator. It hunted whales, dolphins, and other large marine animals. If the Meg was still around, its presence would completely change the balance in the oceans. It would have huge impacts on marine ecosystems, regulating populations and influencing the size and behavior of the ancient shark's prey. A good example is whales. They wouldn't have grown so big if the Meg still hunted in the oceans. This only happened because there was no super predator in the way. If the giant shark was still in our oceans, species like the blue whale would be tiny, as they would need to develop and adapt to be able to escape constant attacks. The lives of the workers of the sea would also be completely different. Fishers would have to avoid certain areas, ships would change routes, and even maritime tourism would be risky. Going for a swim and coming across a shark over 65 feet long? Not worth the risk. Plus, if the Megalodon was still out there, we would have some proof. Commercial fishing catches millions of sharks every year, and a monster of this size would not go unnoticed. Not to mention that with all of today's technology such as drones, satellites, and submarines at our disposal, someone would have already recorded an encounter with this living legend. By the way, most sharks, like most fish, are cold-blooded. But the reality for Megalodon was different. This giant was able to keep its body warmer than the surrounding ocean. This gave it an advantage over other sea creatures, allowing it to remain fast and active even in colder waters. It was a survival advantage that other animals of its kind did not acquire during their evolution. One of the most famous theories is that the Meg lives in the Mariana Trench, but scientists are sure that it doesn't make any sense. This region is poor in food and has many tiny creatures, which would not be nearly enough to sustain a large predator. In addition, there's a lot of research studying countless sharks that live in the ocean depths, and none of them come close to the size of the Megalodon. So, does the Megalodon still exist? Definitely not, but that doesn't mean it isn't any less mysterious and fascinating. Many terrifying animals live deep beyond the waves, like this vampire squid living 3,000 feet below the surface in almost complete darkness. This animal has a cloak, like a vampire's. That's why it's called the vampire squid. Deep down at the bottom, it can't use ink to defend itself. So this animal has developed an unusual tactic. It glows slightly to scare away predators. If this tactic fails, the vampire squid can turn its body inside out, revealing tiny spikes. When you translate its scientific name, Vampiroteuthis infernalis, it literally means vampire squid from the nether. Despite its terrifying looks, it's a harmless ocean animal. This previous creature was not from space, but this object definitely is. Before Elon Musk found a way to reuse rockets, NASA would simply drop old ones after launching astronauts into space, most of the time in the ocean or deserts. In 2012, Jeff Bezos launched a mission to find the Apollo 11 rocket. They found it by using sonar, but it was in terrible condition. It was sitting on the bottom of the ocean, not far from the predicted site. They were able to rescue the engine and reconstruct 2 of them. The most famous lost city is Atlantis, but sadly, we still haven't discovered it. However, Heraklion was also just a myth until one British pilot saw something that looked like a city while flying over the Mediterranean Sea. He reported it, and 60 years later, a group of divers went there. They were shocked when they found an entire city underwater. It was loaded with artifacts that could tell us a lot about the history of the place. Now it's one of the best underwater archaeological sites in the world. It's believed that the rising sea caused the whole city to go underwater. The Titanic sank in 1912. The wreck was claimed to be officially discovered 74 years later. In reality, though, a fisherman found the Titanic 8 years earlier while fishing in the Atlantic Ocean. He was pulling out his net when he spotted a head stuck in it. Luckily, it was just a doll's head. Years later, after the fisher had passed away, his son sold the doll to a doll collector. She did a lot of digging and research on every person who had a porcelain toy on the Titanic. She found the owner of the doll. Ava Hart was on the Titanic and had a doll with her. Ava survived the catastrophe by a miracle, but her toy didn't. Hart even wrote about the doll in her journal, and every detail matched the toy found by the fisherman. The tripod fish lives deep in the abyssal zone, around 20,000 feet below the surface. It's adapted to such immense depths and uses its tripod fins to stay still on the bottom. This creature doesn't have big eyes, but even if it did, these eyes would be useless in the darkness. Instead, the tripod fish uses its fins like antennas to detect any movement in the water. This creature doesn't have much luck when it comes to its love life, so it had to develop unique tactics to reproduce. One fish can be both male and female. The next bizarre creature is the lizardfish. It has tons of razor-sharp teeth, a huge mouth, and really big eyes, which it uses for hunting. All this makes the animal look freaky. The lizardfish lives at depths of around 11,000 feet in the midnight zone, where there is zero light. This freak of nature basically eats everything it can fit inside its mouth, from small fish to other lizardfish. On the other hand, when they see other reptile fish, they probably fall in love instead, because finding mates at those depths is not an easy task. Like the tripod fish, the lizardfish can be both male and female at the same time. When you think of a river, you usually picture it on land. Still, nature is quite unpredictable, and it created a river flowing under the ocean in California. It's running at a depth of around 2 miles. This river has everything that an ordinary river has: sunken logs, trees, and rocks. And despite its uniqueness, it's not the only one in the world. There are also others in the Amazon and Greenland. A terrifying creature was discovered near Angola's coast by a remote operating vehicle. It looks like it doesn't have a head or a body. It was sitting at a depth of around 4,350 feet below the surface. After doing research, scientists concluded it wasn't anything from a sci-fi movie. It was just a cluster of siphonophores stuck together. In 2015, some random guy was diving in Caesarea, and something shiny caught his eye. He reached out, grabbed it, and realized it was a gold coin. After that, he examined the bottom and found out that there were many more. He reported the incident to the local authorities, and they concluded that he had found Arabic treasure. The coins were made of solid 24-karat gold and were a few thousand years old, but due to the perfect salinity and temperature, they looked brand new. The coins belonged to a ship carrying cargo. It was caught up in a storm and unfortunately sank. One of the weirdest things ever discovered was found in the Baltic Sea. It's an anomaly that looks as if it was created by a different civilization. It was discovered by Swedish researchers, and they basically had no idea what it was. They had to ask tons of other scientists for their opinions. When you look at this formation from above, it's 200 feet long and looks exactly like a fallen spaceship. It's hard to believe that it's a natural formation, but spoiler alert, it's totally made by nature because the Baltic Sea has gone through many erosions throughout history. Most likely, the bizarre formation is the result of these processes. A group of divers in Madagascar were shocked when they found this 7-foot monstrosity of a knife on the seafloor. The speculation started immediately, and many said that the knife was from some giants that had fought megalodons and lived on Earth thousands and thousands of years ago. That could make a nice story, but the knife is most likely a movie prop that was lost at sea. One of the ocean's most bizarre animals is the frilled shark. It's believed that this fish is the reason for all those sea serpent stories that sea explorers of the past wrote about. These animals live pretty deep in the ocean, but sometimes they can be seen in shallow waters. It's super rare, but possible. The frilled shark has a big mouth sporting around 300 teeth. It also has a long body that looks like a lizard's, and it is truly a unique species of shark. Its prey can be half of its size because this shark's stomach is like that of a snake, and it can swallow huge fish or crustaceans. Spotting a few worms in your garden is no big deal, but after seeing a 26-foot long one in the ocean, you will make your wetsuit a little wetter. This worm is super rare, and it's completely harmless to humans. It's actually not a giant worm. It's a cluster of zooids that are stuck together in a worm-shaped formation. They usually only eat plankton, bacteria, and other tiny things that can be found in the ocean. Probably the scariest thing in the ocean that is 100% real is the Magnapinna, which can be found at crazy depths of 20,000 feet below the surface. This monster looks like an underwater Slender Man, but it's just a squid with really long tentacles that can reach a terrifying size of 8 feet. This guy has only been seen a few times, and basically, we don't know much about this creature so far. It was the largest fish our Earth had ever seen, and its bite was strong enough to crush a car. The largest of its teeth found was the length of a remote control. It consumed about 2,500 pounds of food a day. That's like 3,300 cans of tuna for you. The earliest Megalodon fossils are from about 20 million years ago, but you won't see its skeleton, and that's because the mighty Meg had no bones. A skeleton made from bones gives most animals their body shape and strength. Sharks, though, come from the same subclass as rays, skates, and sawfish and have cartilage instead of bones. Cartilage is a tissue that is softer and more flexible than bones, but it's still tough enough to shape the body and protect the internal organs. Some areas are more flexible, since cartilage is weaker, and some, like the shark's head, are much tougher thanks to calcified cartilage. Their snouts, though, are made of really soft and flexible cartilage to work like a bumper in case of a collision with some dangers. Who knows if they'd be able to do all this with a heavy skeleton? Plus, cartilage makes their jaws more flexible, and they can open their mouths much wider than they would with a jaw made of bone. Our hero, Meg, was no exception, and it had the strongest bite of all living creatures, which was also made possible by a skeleton made of cartilage. Sharks take full advantage of their cartilage. It helps them swim and turn fast while hunting. One drawback of this type of skeleton is that it was really tricky for scientists to establish the shape and size of Meg. Normally, they would do it using fossilized bone skeletons or their parts. With Meg, they had to guess based on the teeth they found and comparisons with living relatives. A more recent 3D computer model was based partially on scans of a preserved spine discovered in the 1860s. The model showed that Meg was bigger, faster, and even hungrier than scientists had previously thought. Looks like an average megalodon was 52 feet long. That's slightly bigger than the height of the Hollywood sign and weighed 10 times as heavy as an elephant. There were also much bigger creatures. Scientists still aren't sure how the Megalodon got this size. The fact that there were bigger and smaller Megs probably has to do with a little something called Bergmann's rule. It says that the temperature of the surrounding environment affects the animal's body size because they either need to conserve or shed heat. The Megalodons that reached cooler waters probably needed more body weight to make sure they survived in low temperatures. Those living in warmer waters had to be smaller to avoid burning up. If the researchers were correct in their calculations, it also means that Meg reached a cruising speed of over 3 miles per hour, which is much faster than other sharks. The still-living great white shark can cover a distance of nearly 7,000 miles without stopping, which is 9/10 as long as the diameter of Earth. It looks like the Megalodon could have gone much further. Megalodons managed to survive on our planet for nearly 70 times longer than humans have. They were roaming the oceans for around 20 million years, and you could see them pretty much anywhere except near the poles. Scientists discovered the most northern fossils off the coast of Denmark and the most southern in New Zealand. The reason why there were no megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is most likely that these adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. The younger ones like to keep to the shores, while full-grown adults preferred coastal areas, but they could easily move into the open ocean as well. When our planet went through a period of global cooling and drying, and the seas began to freeze around 3.6 million years ago, there was less and less room for Meg to thrive. Much of their prey, like smaller whales, seals, and sea turtles, disappeared or relocated to waters that were too cold for our hero. And at the same time, the number of its natural competitors, like smaller predatory sharks, like the great white shark, and whales, increased. This shifting food chain dynamics could have been even more dangerous for the Meg than the cold ocean water. You're used to seeing them on the big screen as heartless monsters, but these huge sharks were actually loving and caring family guys. Scientists discovered several Megalodon nursery areas in Florida, Maryland, Panama, and off the coast of Spain. It looks like they gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. Then, little Megs would stay there with adults protecting and raising them until they were ready to fight off predators. The mighty Meg had 276 teeth in 5 rows in its mouth. Similar to other sharks, it was fast in replacing its worn-out or lost teeth. With 4 or 5 rows of teeth in its mouth, it basically acted like a conveyor belt, able to grow back damaged or missing teeth. This means that an adult megalodon probably would have grown several thousand teeth throughout its lifetime. Although the great white shark is often mentioned as Meg's closest relative, they'd hardly be distant cousins. The ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg, but they weren't best friends and even rivaled each other. The great white shark wouldn't win in a head-to-head fight with a Meg, but it was a better hunter using its smaller size and agility to snap up the giant's prey quickly. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg, but its food supplies began to run out as the whales swam to the cooler new seas. Rather than a great white, the Megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. We also speak of Meg as an extinct giant, but can we be 100% sure it isn't hiding somewhere as we speak? After all, we've only explored 5% of our oceans altogether. The Mariana Trench is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth, and you could dip the whole of Mount Everest in its deepest part, and over a mile of it would still be above the surface. If a megalodon or two needed a place to hide, that would be the perfect spot. It wouldn't be the coziest place to live though, with its cold water and total darkness. Plus, the pressure there is 1,000 times stronger than at sea level. So, if a Meg really were hiding down there, it would have serious issues with its teeth, because calcium would dissolve under that pressure. To survive here, it would also need to learn to navigate in complete darkness. That means it would have either become bioluminescent or evolve to grow massive eyes like the giant squid. If the Meg were still around and true to its dietary choices, it would have to eat smaller fish, and that would be a problem for us humans. Especially those of us who love fish, that is. And the ocean isn't cooling down these days. The Megalodon would love its temperature and would thrive and reproduce faster than ever. Those giants would create some massive problems for cargo ships and cruising vessels. In case you're now scared at the thought of meeting a Megalodon, relax. Most scientists don't think it's possible because of our hero's size. Most foods that megalodons like to eat live in shallow ocean areas and not in the deep, deep sea. Meg would need to come up for dinner every now and then, and it's kinda hard to miss a creature this big. They're both giant prehistoric creatures to us, but the megalodons and the dinosaurs never actually coexisted. The dinosaurs probably died out about 66 million years ago. Megalodons seem to have appeared a bit later. The megalodon was the biggest shark to ever live. Not only that, it's one of the biggest fish and the largest predator in Earth's history. Over 3 times longer than the biggest great white shark on record, the females have also been found to be twice the size of the males. The megalodon could swallow a small car without even touching its teeth, if cars had been around then. In fact, the Meg was so big and powerful that it had no natural predators. It was the uncrowned king of the seas, swimming freely from ocean to ocean. This cosmopolitan creature was found all over the world, from America to Europe and Australia and Japan, assuming there were countries back then. Meg fossils have been found on every continent except Antarctica. Everybody skips Antarctica. Science tells us that the megalodon went extinct over 3.6 million years ago, but could they still be alive at the deepest depths of the ocean? The fearsome name, Megalodon, comes from 2 Greek words, megas, meaning big, and odont, meaning tooth. Combined, they mean big tooth, and it's certainly lived up to its name. Just one of its chompers is the same size as a human head. It had 276 humongous teeth in total, across 5 terrifying rows. In all of history, only a couple of saber-toothed cats and the T-Rex had consistently bigger teeth. Now that's a showdown I'd like to watch. The megalodon vanished millions of years ago, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. Only around 80% of the ocean has been explored, so who knows what's lurking at the bottom. If you did manage to make it down, it's unlikely that you'll run into Meg though. The sharks, like us, preferred warm coastal waters. Deep ocean living would be too cold for the beasts, and food would be scarce. Their entire bodies would also have to evolve to avoid being squished by the enormous water pressure down there. It's unlikely that they're still around, but not impossible. Now, about the appearance of the megalodon. Scientists believe it didn't look like a great white shark. The megalodon belongs to a different fish family and most likely looked like a giant sand tiger shark. Flattened snout, small eyes. Its dorsal fin moved backward. The sand shark has 2 dorsal fins about the same size. The coloration is light brown with a white belly. It may have had brown-red spots like a sand shark all over its body. We used to think of the megalodon as something scary from the first finds of its fossils. That was back in the Renaissance era. People found some teeth in the rocks. At first, these teeth were thought to be the tongues of dragons or snakes. And here is the first drawing of what the owner of these teeth supposedly looked like. A massive snout with a scary nose and a bunch of razor-sharp teeth. The megalodon is usually described as a sort of giant great white shark, but this is just a common myth. In fact, the ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg. But they weren't the best buddies and were even in competition with each other. The great white shark was a better hunter, using its smaller size and agility to snap up Meg's prey quickly. They were also known to eat Meg pups, who were only half their size. This didn't help the whole extinction thing. We also have evidence that megalodons were brutal hunters, kings of the food chain. The first combat tool in their arsenal was the battering ram. The megalodon would take its prey by surprise. It had only one chance to hit it. If it missed, it would take too long for a second round. The maneuverability of the megalodon was comparable to a large truck. While a great white was no match for an adult Meg in a head-to-head fight, they sure weren't scared of stealing their food. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg. But its food supplies began to run out as the whales swam to the cooler new seas. The whales adapted to prefer the colder temperatures, leaving our friend the Meg behind. The megalodons either starved or were frozen into extinction by the Ice Age. Rather than a great white, the megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. As scary as they are, these sharks were actually caring family guys. Several Megalodon nursery areas have been discovered in Florida, Maryland, and Panama. They gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. We know this from discovering loads of tiny Megalodon teeth found in these areas. I wonder if they had nannies too. But how come there are so many Megalodon teeth out there for us to analyze? Due to their messy, aggressive eating habits, sharks regularly lose their teeth. They lose a set of teeth every 1 to 2 weeks. That's 40,000 teeth in a lifetime. They must rake in a fortune from the tooth fairy. Because of this, their teeth were continually raining down to the ocean floor. Luckily for us, they're also the hardest part of the shark skeleton, which is why so many teeth have survived and become fossilized. It's fair to say the first discoveries of the Meg's teeth confused people. Early discoverers thought that the Meg's teeth were petrified tongues of ancient serpent creatures. They even used to call them tongue stones. It's also a common myth that the Megalodon was around at the same time as the dinosaurs, although this would have been pretty cool. The dinosaurs were wiped out around 66 million years ago, but the Megalodons came much later. The oldest Meg fossil is only around 23 million years old, but it's tricky to pinpoint the exact date. After all, calendars weren't invented yet. They became extinct way before humans even evolved. The earliest Homo sapiens, which is a fancy name for the first humans, emerged about 2.5 million years ago. But what if the Megalodon shark didn't go extinct? Whale populations have dropped drastically since these guys were last around, so there'd be way fewer whales for them to chomp down on. Whales have also gotten a lot smarter and learned new defensive moves, making them way harder to take down. It's estimated that they ate around 12 tons of food each day. The Kraken is a colossal squid, a legendary sea monster, the biggest hunk of calamari you ever saw. And if this monster had existed, the world would have changed beyond recognition. The Kraken has powerful tentacles, solid muscles with suckers at the end. They're impossible to escape. The Kraken can break a ship in half, or just pull it down into the depths. But the worst thing about the Kraken is its size. According to old sailors' stories, its size is almost 10 soccer fields. Hey, maybe the Kraken could play soccer. The Kraken legends said the monster was so giant that sailors mistook it for a small island. In past centuries, it would have been impossible to defeat such a beast. If the Kraken existed in reality, it might have had offspring. Yeah. In all the world's oceans, there would be giant monsters that could sink any ship. It's unlikely that the Kraken would have competitors in its habitat, so its population would grow strongly. Since the Kraken is enormous, it would need a lot of food, so the population of other large sea animals would fall significantly. Blue whales, great white sharks, other giant squids, all the big sea creatures would be endangered. The Kraken belongs to the cephalopod genus. This species includes squid and octopus, some of the most intelligent creatures on the planet. The Kraken is a skilled hunter and will never fight in the open. Colossal squids live in deep waters and they have the largest eyes among all animals. The squid's eye is the size of a dinner plate. Thanks to this, they can see their prey from far away. Similarly, a Kraken would spot the ship much sooner than sonar could pick up the Kraken. It would always have the drop on you. Well, that's not good. In 1857, a squid beak was discovered on the coast of Denmark. Other huge squid remains were found in the Bahamas, and then scientists were convinced that gigantic squids existed. While colossal squid have been officially discovered since then, it's been more than 100 years and we still don't know what the max size they can grow to. The fact is, colossal squids are one of the most elusive creatures on Earth. They live in the depths of the ocean where it's challenging for scientists to reach. Any dive to a greater depth requires powerful, bulky equipment. Underwater bathyscaphs and cameras make a lot of noise and light, which squids notice from afar. They flee before we can see them. It's difficult to say if these huge squids were the size of a small island, but the truth is, we've only studied about 5% of the ocean. It may be that in its depths, monsters much more terrible than the Kraken swim.